Hello, I'm Richard Raffan. I've just completed this set of spillikins. They take about 10 hours to make, so in this video what you're going to see is the kind of highlights. Some of which were pretty frustrating for me but might be educational for you. We'll have a quick look at these first. This box is 22 centimeters long and 55 wide, which is roughly 9 by 2¼ inches. Inside we have 35 sticks, which I find is a kind of good number to play with, and they're all slightly different. I usually have 6 sets of 5, and in this case there are some paddles with a sort of kind of slight lump in the middle. There are beads, some more kind of paddles with a squarish end, usually a set of plain ones, and what I call barbells. So this is basically a rod with a lump at either end, which in this case I've carved down, decorated a bit. Usually 10 twisted ones, which are like propellers, and then the pickers and lifters at the end. Now the main thing is that if you've got beads in the middle of something, of one of the sticks, do not put them all in the same place, otherwise you'll need a much larger box. Sticks like this are obviously turned first between centres, and then the flat is sanded off on a belt sander, and then hand sanded just to get the corners off, just rubbed up and down, and then I go over them with a Scotch-Brite, and that just burnishes them up. Then they get oiled. Now if you're still wondering what these are for, it's a game, probably more commonly known as pick-up sticks. In some parts of the world as Mikado, and the idea is to pick one stick off the pile without moving the others, which I did then, and when that happens you throw the stick back on the pile and the next player has a go, and so on until all the sticks are gone. If you're a turner, I encourage you to have a go at these. People are intimidated by the sticks, but they're actually just tedious. You get the hang of those pretty quickly. The difficult bit is the box. You can drill it out, but there are all kinds of little things which can go wrong, which you'll see in this video, unfortunately. The blanks for the spillikin boxes are generally about 10 inches long, which is 260 millimeters, by about 50 wide, which is 2 inches. This is slightly larger. This is 55 millimeters, which is 2¼ and the next thing to decide is on the where the lid's going to be divided. Now a spillikin stick is generally 190 long, so it's going to be there, so I've got plenty of spare at either end. I want the flange which fits in the lid, which fits over to the base, to be about 1 inch. So if I'm going to lose a little bit at the top, and I seem to remember I do them at about 4 inches deep for the lid, and then that comes down around 1 inch, and so the base then will be 5 inches or just slightly shorter, so that'll be about right, and I can play around with the actual proportions with some kind of detail, beads or grooves. So I'm going to cut that initially there, just part that off. I've got that little nub which was left from the parting off, so that would really be better removed. I'll get rid of that. 3/8 spindle gouge. And by removing that little lump, it just means that when I bring the drill in, which is what I'm going to do here, it'll just be slightly better, less likely to kick out. I've got the Jacob's chuck set in here. with a 1 7/8 drill, and I'm going to be guided by the depth by the markings on the quill here. So that is the depth of the flange, which is going to fit over the base. I need a slightly smaller drill to go further in. So I'm coming down to 1 5/8, which leaves me enough of a shoulder. I can probably open this up a little bit more, but what I'm mostly after at this stage is a nice clean hole to the bottom. I used to do this with very long handled scrapers, but I don't possess those any longer since I downsized. Now this time I need to check where I'm going to. Going in about 100 millimeters, I think it was. So that proved to be quite a hard drilling job, very tough end grain, and it's produced dust, whereas normally I'd expect shavings. And I've still got to get in to the very end because the Forstner bit has that little cone in the middle, and I don't really want that little hole in the middle. My other solution would be to get a pointy tool in and make grooves around it and make it decorative, but what I generally do is go in with this, which is a pretty heavy tool with a 2-foot handle, and it's a 1 inch or 25 mil by 9 mil thick scraper, and I need magnets on the end so I know when I'm getting near the bottom. And the idea is going to be to come into the wood, tool down, feel for where the centre is, just drop the handle slightly and sweep it away, and that will get rid of the divot at the little cone at the end. You can't see this happening, so you just need to get right over the tool handle. Probably a little bit more speed. I'm not running too fast because if the catches happen at high speed, they're just more dramatic. There's the hole. The sanding is done. And I've got the little flange in there. Now to oil this, I'm going to use boiled linseed oil to ensure I get into the corners. And it'll just get draped around the stick. Get some wax in there as well. So build up a sticky layer just past the, in fact really as far as I can go in. I don't really want my finger in there with that in case it all comes loose and then I might get a broken finger.
that will work it in, and there's some wax in the sock anyway, so yep, that looks all right. So that's the lid done, and that comes off. So that was the easy bit. Not really looking forward to drilling out this. It's an awfully long way down. But the first thing is to, as with any box, is to that's not quite running quite true. So I'm just going to turn it round a little bit in the chuck. So just hitting it on the far side. Don't know if you can begin to see the figure coming up. This is highly figured Tasmanian blackwood. Now the same tool, the same drill should drill that out, but I also want to make sure that the lid's going to fit. So first thing I'll do is to just turn the very end so that the inside of the lid just fits over that. 3/4 inch skew chisel for that. Right, where it rubs is where it fits, and where it rubs, we can't quite see it, but it's just there where the pencil mark is. So now I need to drill that out. Drill down to at least there. Well, I've just realised that this will not fit inside the bit I'm hollowing, so I'll go down as far as I can with this drill, and then I'm going to have to do the rest by hand. Fortunately, I remember that I had this extension with a Morse taper on it for drills, so that's what I'm now going to use. So that just goes into the tailstock, and I only need to go about another 15 millimeters. Oh, get the dust out. And the next thing is to finish the flange, really, or get that pretty well down to size. Then I can check that the stick fits inside. I'd rather do that before I go too much further. My maths isn't always up to these things. Now, I'd almost forgotten, I've got to get rid of the little conical hole in the middle at the bottom. I suppose I could put a bit of cloth in there or something, a bit of leather, and hide it, but just tends to look better if you can get rid of it with a tool. So much longer tool handle here. This is also a couple of feet long. This blade is 3/4 inch. It's an old P&N. Get the magnets so I know roughly where I am for depth. Make sure the rest is high enough that I'm down at center. Just sounds terribly hard, this wood. So the idea here is this is slightly skewed to the right, so the angle here is around kind of 88 degrees, probably 89 degrees, somewhere around there. Slight radius on the tool, and the idea is to come in, bring the corner in, and drag it across the end grain. Hand on the rest, and just squeeze the tool across. and get as much weight over the tool handle as possible. Some down there. If you just push in the middle, you'll go down, but you'll also leave a little kind of a hump dead center, and that can be difficult to get rid of. Now to go down a bit further, I can just drop the handle, that pivots the edge up into the wood, just about 1 millimetre or so, not very much. So little steps across the bottom just to get rid of the, take the whole of the bottom down to the new level. Sounds better. Catches down at that level when you're hanging that far over the rest tend to be quite exciting, and you can easily lose 1/4 inch of or tear the grain out, or maybe not 1/4 inch, certainly 1/8 of an inch. That's still evidence of the cone there. I could actually think I could feel a little lump being removed at centre there. Yes, I did. Good. So, internal calipers, just to see what's happening down at the bottom. I'm tempted to just take a very slow cut with the square end scraper all the way down. Just widen the whole thing slightly at the back, and that'll do two things. One, it'll give more room for the sticks when they go in, and it'll also make the base a little bit lighter and just feel better. Thinner tool, that will come up a fraction. And this is not something which is so easy to do with a negative rake scraper. I don't use negative rake scrapers, but all I want is the corner in contact with the wood. If you've got a negative rake with the corner of the tool down a bit, the two sides are going to keep the thing shifting over to the right. Feel where the shoulders. Oh dear, just what I didn't want. Yes, not too bad. But catches when you're about 4 inches over the rest tend to be pretty aggressive. Right, so I've just got to go across the bottom again with the corner of the tool. So when I went down, there were all kinds of odd little squeaky noises and stuff. Doesn't actually feel too bad. My fingers can't get down there. But I can probably feel if there's any torn grain, just taking that very lightly, but I can't feel anything there. So, but I'm going in to start with 120 grit. So if there are any little ridges and stuff down there at that level, that should be okay. That should get rid of that. A bit longer than I need. So now I've got the aggressive stuff just on the full curve of the wood. The other advantage of using the heavy grit here is that I can widen the bottom a bit just with sanding. I'm at the stage where the inside is finished, the lid is finished, so the next thing, and I've established the diameter on which the lid fits, so the next thing is to cut the flange, the depth of the inside there, so just re-measure that. Use millimeters, which is much easier than imperial. Yep, so that line is just about where it should be. So the idea now is to peel this wood down to a cylinder, where that black mark is. I'm going to run this at, must be about 1700, 1824. It's a peeling cut. Tool going out and then down, not straight in, that's a scrape. Now I don't trust myself to do a shear cut here, and I don't trust the wood either, so I'll just take a little bit more down there and we'll do another trial fit. Just hold the lid over gently, and where there is a burnish mark, but that is exactly where it fits. Much more accurate than using calipers. This is what I call a low peel. It's not the rapid wood removal is with the tool up, probably about 30 degrees. This is much nearer 15. Crunching is good, pistol shot is bad, means wood split. If I go too far on the shoulder here, I can always take a bit off the end. Well, the other thing I need to do is just remove that mark. If I parted it off, I'd have a tube. Now the underside there, I can cut it in with a shear cut, but I always find it more accurate, much safer to do it with the beveled side. And I want it slightly undercut. Shake the dust out. Now that should leave another kind of broader burnish mark, which it does. Easier to see now. I've now got it much tighter. It's almost there. I can see that there's a slight lump up where it isn't burnished. I hope we'll get it all the way on. Now, assuming that it does, I now need to measure the depth and mark that on the outside. And it's always important when you're making a box to know where the inside is. Don't make allowances. Just mark exactly where the inside is, and then you can work in relation to that. There, this one is up to there. Yep. Right, so there's next to nothing to play with there. Right, that goes on. before it goes right on, I'm just going to cut another little chamfer there, so the chamfers are even on the top and the bottom. That is where the inside of the bottom is. I'm going to use a very narrow parting tool. Actually, no, my normal parting tool is probably narrow enough. It's a D-way parting tool. So I want about 1/4 of an inch in the bottom for a bit of weight. So I'm just going to put a little mark in there, and I know that when I come to part this off, I just need to bring the same tool in onto the same slot. The slot won't be there, only the right hand, the left hand side will be there, but that's all I need to know. Right, so this is beginning to look quite top heavy at the moment. Right, now, like a bit of shape to this. I'm going to use peeling cuts rather than, I might try a shear cut. The 1-inch skew. I bought this bit of wood for its high figure, and the moment I turned a box out of it about 5-6 years ago, maybe longer, I thought, right, no more of this, it's far too hard and difficult. And I'm now being reminded of all that. Right, so I want some beads in the middle, so I'm going to have, that'll be one bead, and I'm going to come up from there. Now, the proportions don't look quite right at the moment. I'm going to get rid of that under the bead. I'd forgotten to check whether my stick fits inside, and it doesn't. So I have to go down another 20 millimeters, and I did say, did I not, that my sums weren't very good. So you're not going to see this, I'm just going to have to bore down another 20 millimeters. These boxes in the past have been nearer 9 inches tall, and that's what alerted me to the fact that I might not have had it deep enough. So anyway, I'm down another 20 millimeters, which means that the center is now pretty well where that bead is, which is good for me. And I just want a bit of weight, kind of, I don't want it to look top heavy, so I'm going to put a couple of beads just here, and I can test what those will look like by just putting a few lines. So 3, 4. So I'll start by developing that. I've measured this inside. That wall there is 1/4 of an inch, as it is up here, or slightly more there. But that's really going to be my guiding size. I can take the lid on and off any number of times to check how thick it is and how it's going. But this will, I'm almost there now, so that's a relief. So, into the 1-inch skew, and I'm just going to use, we'll try a shear cut down here. The trouble with very figured grain, and this has got heavy fiddleback grain, is that it's likely to pick out. there, so I'm going to be much better off peeling this. As it absolutely comes through, it'll be heavy sanding. Now for the moment I'm just going to leave the central mass roughed out. I can bring this down a little bit. I'm really thinking in terms of a curve sweeping through underneath the bead. Now to shift the visual weight further up, I can remove that bead so that the top one's just fits down onto the flange, and that might be a good way to go. But that will all have to come off. I'll have to shift the lid off before I do that. I'm just going to do a bit more here. Not the most elegant way of turning, but there's no picked up grain. So at this stage I'll just ease that off enough. Running true, yes. To ease that off enough that I can remove that lower bead. And I want that. No, that's okay. I want that. It's very easy to cut too steep or too long a chamfer there, which means I've got a little kind of V groove at the bottom of the bead, and I don't want that. Now, the other thing I have to do at this stage is project my curve here through to the bottom of the box, which will be down here. That is where the inside is, and then I'll have about 1/4 inch of thickness at the bottom. So I'll shove that back on. Good job I didn't put that little parting cut in any deeper. I need to emphasize this is not a scrape in on the radius. It's tools tilted up a little bit. The reason I'm not moving this out of the chuck just yet is because if I do that, the fitting parts will be off center. Let's see where that is. If you doubted there was a suction fit, you heard it pop. And that is beginning to sound a little bit thin. Down to about just over 1/8 of an inch, I think that is. It is 3.5 millimeters. Just over whatever that is, just over a 5/16, I think it is. So there's a little bit to play with there. That's good. I can take that down a little bit further. That looks okay there. Now I need to continue that line up to the top. Interrupted by phone calls. No, where are we? Do I want their bigger band? And I don't think I do. I'm just going to try rounding this over as a really worried about picking up the grain. I also have an eyesight problem in that it's not as good as it was. Right, trying to avoid that again, just use the wing or the bevel side. Right, I shall have a break and think about the top. Looks like oil coming through. Wasn't expecting that. So I've had a little break, and then I came back and I've measured the inner depth. So what I have inside, this is the end of the main kind of drilling, and then if you remember I took a little bit out in the middle, and so that is the absolute top of the inside. So I can start my outside cut quite happily from about there, and I've got this amount to play with in the top. Now it's a nasty hard wood, so I'm going to have a go at this with a gouge to start with, and when I'm using the gouge I generally have that across the edge here. Now I think that's on firm enough that I won't have to use the tail center. Looks like it shifted a bit. Appears to be on tight. Right, so that's running out very slightly. I've got enough wood in the top for me to have that for security. I'll rough this down. That's hard work. I'm going to touch that up. Oh, good grief. I don't know what's in this wood, but it's certainly not normal blackwood. shoot forward like that means I'm pushing too hard. Drop on that. A little shear cut there. My eyesight is not up to this. Right, we're going to have another go at this with a long point. Good. I'll sand this with 240 grit to start with. Right, now I can come off onto the main body. 320 grit. So I need to get the lid done next. Dust is pouring off this, which tells me I'm going to have to be very careful when I come to try and fit the lid in a couple of minutes. The sock's got some oil in it. Quite as flashy as I might have hoped. So that's fitting pretty well most of the way on, and given my experience just now with the sanding, I'm just going to sand the headstock side half of that flange, and I'm not going to risk anything too harsh. 240 grit. Good decision by the feel of it. Right, so that's making a little kind of crunching sound at the end. I'm going to go in with a little bit of 180. That will do. Right, so the next thing is to shift the whole thing out in the chuck so I can attend to the other end. So with these shark jaws, there are marks with the bigger teeth inside, so I can use those as a guide. And so I need to come out to about there. part it off, and I've got to make a chuck to reverse chuck it. Oh, almost forgot. I'm going to take this down while it's held fairly firmly in the chuck. Take most of that away. I have to do the rest. Oh, it actually looks pretty good. Now, the thing to remember when making jam chucks is that when you're sanding anything like this, you tend to round the opening just a little bit, so it's the width you grip on is probably about ½ an inch down. And this gets fitted just as I fitted the lid to the base. That was too much. Where it rubs is where it fits. This is where it's so tempting just to knock it on, and that is when you split them. So I'm thinking in terms of a 1/4 of a degree taper, very little. There's a very slight burnish mark there, just there. Not yet. You need to remember, the nearer you get to centre, the slower the wood is moving. Right, so there's a teeny bit more to come off the bottom. Still a line there where that's running true. So, 320 grits. I think while I'm at it, I'm just going to take a little bit more off against the shoulder up on the flange. Just feel it might be a slightly better fit in the long run. So I'm looking for my little bit of 180. Could get in there with a skew point, but just feel I might take off a little bit too much. Now the bottom doesn't get anything for the moment because I'll be writing on it. Where the grain should line up. be on one side only because the grain is running off at an angle. But that is the box done. What a relief. So now we come to the sticks, which are 190 long. I've got my standard stick length there, 190mm, which is 7.5 inches. Best to hold them in in pin jaws rather than a Jacob's chuck. The Jacob's chuck, as the jaws tighten, they move forward, which forces the stick onto the tail center. So if you're using a Jacob's chuck, you want to be careful about that and just make sure that you ease the tail center back as you tighten the jaws. You won't do it too often because you split the end, and you soon learn about those things. Right, so you want this aligned properly. You don't want to pull it in because that sets up tension in the general stick. Now I'm going to be making these sticks out of Queensland rosewood mahogany, which is going to be a lot easier than the timber I made the box from. In fact, anything would be easier than that. So this is a 3/4 inch skew. Any pressure you put in with a tool, you need to take up with your fingers. Fingers get too hot, you're clearly pushing the tool too hard. And you mark the end and the end. Now I make these in 6 sets of 5 and 5 pickers. So let's get the center down. I normally do the difficult ones first, get them out of the way. So some are going to have beads in the middle, some will have beads at the end, like long barbells. A thing you learn very early on if you're making any number of these sets is that you do not want all the beads in the same place on the stick. You need to spread them up and down. So I'm going to, the first one I'll do, actually I've got the wrong size skew here, I need a 1/2 inch. So we'll do beads in the middle. So use your hand as a kind of 3-point steady. Now it's quite difficult. I like to have 36 sticks in a box. But if they're all round, you won't get them in. So I tend to make a fair number of these as paddles or like propellers. So these ones would be paddles with a straight end. with my thumb. Got to be a wee bit careful not to get that too thin at first, because I've got to sand these. I'm going with, hope I can get away with 220. Or was it 240? I never remember. 200 something. These are getting quite flexible. And we'll do a bit of 320 as well. And all these get oiled once I've done all the sanding. And then they're all dust free, whereas this sanding the polished surface, they tend to, dust gets cut, stuck into the grooves and so on. Number 1, first of 36, 35. I'll sharpen up my skew, and I'll do everything with the 1/2 inch, I think. Just don't wrap the abrasive round your fingers. I'm sure somebody will feel the need to tell me this is incredibly dangerous and I shouldn't have my fingers near the spinning wood. Right, that end's broken. This happens. So what you do on this occasion, it doesn't matter because that's going to get flattened anyway on the sander. So this now comes into there. I want to get it running fairly true. And carry on sanding. So in this situation you've got to use one hand as a in lieu of the tail center. Right. The breakage is not a problem. Number 2, and so on. So there'll be 5 of those.
And now these are going to live in Alaska, in Juneau, Alaska.